Okay, so good evening, everyone. Saturday night, and it's the first full day of our practice schedule, winter retreat. Quite nice to be beginning to settle in. It'll take a while, and Ajahn Yaniko set the theme as back to basics, which is sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's just, I think it's just so important to keep returning to the fundamentals of the teaching, and whenever we really nourish the roots of the the teaching, the training, then we really grow, and it's those they're on a certain level, the fundamental truths that the Buddha gave are well, one, they're enough, and two, they really are the foundation for all growth in knowledge, understanding, insight, and liberation. And so that being able to keep coming back to those, the basic teachings, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, anicca, dukkha, anatta, you're really setting the stage for one's real growth. So often the mind gets either dissatisfied, or it gets distracted, or it gets manages to complicate things in the sense of there must be something else, and it's that fundamental dissatisfaction. That's the whole root of the problem. So learning how to really delve into the nature of the mind itself through understanding these basics, learning how to develop real virtue and integrity, real mindfulness and stability of heart, and real insight. It's with those basics, those foundations, that we can really liberate the heart. So it's a very apt theme, and a really important one to not overlook the importance, and to be able to give oneself to that exploration of the teachings. That's like so. Ajahn Yaniko gave the first reading today, and it was from the book Still Forest Pool, Ajahn Chah, and of course that's always a breath of fresh air to come back to Ajahn Chah's teachings, and one of the things that in one of the teachings that Ajahn Chah was giving, similarly, just sort of saying, if you develop this path, you develop this these fundamental practices, you will never be bored. And it's certainly say the hallmark of worldly life is boredom, frustration, seeking distraction in some way, shape, or form. And but when the heart is really alert and present, mindful, clear, reflective and investigative, there's no space for boredom. Everything is interesting, and and I remember myself. This is years ago. I'd been on. I was doing a year-long sabbatical retreat at Chitra's Forest Monastery, living in the forest by myself, and I go into the central area, the kitchen, for my alms round, and one day there was I'd been probably in retreat for about 6 months or something, and an older Thai woman who I'd known for a long, long time came to the monastery that day. She lived nearby, but she'd been away, and then she was asking what I did while I was on retreat. And I said, "You're on retreat? What are you doing?" And sort of, well, get up at 3 or 4 in the morning and do some exercises or yoga and meditate, and then by the time it's dawn, have a cup of tea, meditate, do walking meditation, do sitting meditation, go for the meal, come back, meditate, read some Dhamma books, meditate, and have a cup of tea, meditate. And she looked at me with this look of horror. Isn't that boring? And I said, well, no, not at all. We only get bored when we're not really mindful or peaceful. So that sense of being able to come back to those basics really opens up a world for us of truth and understanding. So to be able to have 3 months of exploring and developing this practice in a foundational, fundamental way is a great gift, and so quite wonderful to be having this opportunity. Also, I've only just come back from about 6 weeks of travel in India and Thailand, and it's about a week. So I'm finally kind of getting into this time zone and feeling somewhat rested. Although we'll see what I feel like tomorrow morning. Each morning's different, but I had the opportunity to go to. The invitation was to teach in an ashram in Rishikesh, And so I ended up leaving here about mid-November. And then I did stay in Thailand for I arrived late at night and spent 4 nights in Thailand. So 3 full days to try to get over jet lag and not be too wasted when I got to India, because I knew it was going to be a full schedule, and it was, but went to India, flew into Delhi. Next day, flew up to Rishikesh and began teaching that day at this ashram. It was quite a lovely community. I'd never met them before, and the chief swami there was from Belgium, and he's been a practitioner of in his Hindu practice, Advaita Vedanta, for the past about 30 odd years, and very, very solid, very delightful being, and has a community around him. And the theme of it was like a series, it was like a seminar, lecture series, but it wasn't just lectures, it was we were practicing together, and sort of Buddhism and non-duality. So it was a exploration of the practices and teachings that allow the mind to loosen its grip of attachment, and so that and then exploring it from. I qualified before I even accepted the invitation. I said, I'm not a scholar. I'm not really interested in religious debate or even kind of a comparative philosophy. It's not really, doesn't really interest me. But I'm happy to reflect on different ways of practice. So it's like a interreligious dialogue, because I would give a teaching, and then the Swami would give say a reflection on from his perspective, and then opening up for questions and answers after. But both of us really tried to keep things on a practice level. So it was really quite interesting. They set themes for each day, and it's like the first day was actually quite lovely. As an introduction, was like Ajahn Chah's teachings and way of practice, and it was very lovely because in the shrine room where the teachings were given, there was a nice big photo of Ajahn Chah, and then on one side, on the other side, a photo of Sri Ramana Maharishi, who's a great Advaita Vedanta practitioner and teacher. And then talks on like effort and no effort. Like part of the Advaita perspective is shouldn't really need to have, shouldn't be effort. If you're putting forth effort, you're making a problem. But then, of course, they're pretty diligent in their meditation and practice. So what does that mean? And so just exploring the whole realm of, because that's what, for the Buddha, right effort, just one of the factors of the Eightfold Path. And also the elements of faith and grace, in the sense like the grace of the Guru, that and faith from a Buddhist perspective. How does that work in terms of practice? Self and not self, certainly in Hindu practice, and one of the big goals is the realization of self or true self. And of course, Buddha is saying it's not self. How does this work? How do you reconcile these things? There's talk on meditation. There's a talk on Nibbana that I was asked to give at the largest, and one evening we bussed all of the participants of the kind of retreat. There was they limited the number of people to join these teaching sessions to 100, and which made it quite comfortable for the space, and then also comfortable for not too unwieldy. And then we went over to the Shivananda ashram, which is one of the older ashrams in Rishikesh, and certainly the largest. So it was, and was very graciously received by the. There were many senior and elder swamis there. But the head one was like 89 years old, and he's a really bright being who reminded me of Panyananda Bhikkhu, who's Lompa Panyananda, who I traveled with, and it was a great teacher in Thailand, very kind of regal in his bearing and his ability to just be present. But anyway, it was a lovely occasion, and in one of the last evening there was a kind of an interreligious or a religious sort of concert of chanting and from different traditions, Buddhist. There was a group of young monks from Bangalore, Theravada monks, who would do chanting before each teaching, so as a blessing. And they're trained, and very well trained monks from Bangalore, and apparently the center that they have in Bangalore for teaching and training bhikkhus is they have a regular Zoom session with Ajahn Pasanno, so it's quite they're quite plugged in, having these young bhikkhus. So it's just to say the wonders of the internet age, where you get being able to plug into different teachers, and doesn't really matter where on the planet, you can join them. As is probably happening this evening, where people are plugging in from many places. So that was it was just a wonderful opportunity for sharing, and the talk from the Shivananda ashram is actually available on our website now. It's the audio's been up for a while, and then the just received today actually the sort of the whole video, and it's a very good quality. Again, I got an email from the Swami today from there, and he said that they did have a videographer filming and recording the whole event, but he said it's going to be another 1 or 2 months. It's a huge project to edit it, and so 1 or 2 months before it's actually finished. But I'm sure that'll be of interest to people. But it was I'd heard about Rishikesh for like decades and decades and decades, ever since I probably first traveled in India over 50 years ago. But I finally made it. And then after that event, we went up and visited. Ajahn Jivako has been helping out this past year, trying to prepare there's some land in northern India. It's about 3.5 hours north of Rishikesh, in the foothills of the Himalayas. Not quite as, because Rishikesh is in the foothills of the Himalayas, but it's quite dramatic and rising up pretty steeply. Where the land for the monastery is in the foothills, but it's just starting to become hills. It's just coming off the plains of India and turning into hills. So the actual elevation is about the same as Abhayagiri, about 1,000-foot elevation, and then smaller hills. Maybe not quite as dramatic as here. But still, they're forested hills, and the forests had monkeys and peacocks, and quite rich, certainly rich bird life and animal life. And it's about half a kilometer to a kilometer kind of walk to an ancient monastery that the ruins are still there, and it's protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. So we went over there and did a puja and did some meditation and sort of wandered the land, or the others wandered the land, and I didn't. My knee was really bothering me. The ashram in Rishikesh was really built because it's right on the banks of the Ganges, so it rises up pretty steeply, and so that the ashram is about, I don't know, 4 or 5 stories tall and going up, and everything was at different levels, and we were going up and down stairs all the time. And the monks were starting to sort of, is there some way we can carry him up and down these things? But anyway, there was, wandered the land, and and we had a blessing ceremony on the land, and the villagers came. I gave a talk that was translated, and had a Q&A session after, and there was lots of interesting questions from the villagers. So Ajahn Jivako has made a really wonderful connection with the local people, and they wanted to know. They actually asked, and it was the first time that Ajahn Jivako had wind of this. They were actually, one of the village leaders, elders, was saying, how do we offer alms food to these monks? How do we support them? So that bodes well for the future. And there was some other kind of samana, sadhu, religious seeker that came and joined, and he invited us over to his little hermitage, and so it's just making nice connections with the local people, and they haven't built anything. Ajahn Jivako is focused mainly on trying to figure out how the land could be used, could be developed, and fortunately he's done that, because there was an area that when they first purchased the land, first got there in the spring, seemed like the perfect place to start building buildings, and then, of course, then it got into the the monsoon season, and about half of that area that they thought was a great place to start building got washed away from the the runoff from the rains, heavy rains. So anyway, he's been mostly focused on planting trees, and which is if you're a forest monastery, you really want to have trees, and being in India, it was partially forested. It was partially kind of pretty scrubby. The villagers are a lot of goat herders, so goats eat absolutely everything. So that it's that they're going to have to be growing their forest. So that was, and then I went back from there down to Delhi and gave a series of teachings at the center in Delhi. That was the kind of the lay center for beginning the project of establishing a branch monastery of Wat Nanachad, of Ajahn Chah's in India. And I gave a series of teachings and meditations there over like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then was it one day we went and we had enough time to be able to go to the National Museum in Delhi, and they've got a whole section dedicated to Buddhism in the National Museum, and of course relics of the Buddha, and generally it's set up in a way that you could go in and pay respects to the shrine where the relics are, and do pujas there. But it just happened, it looked like there were, I don't know, a bunch of tour groups from Korea or Vietnam, Asian countries to pay respects to the shrines as well. So there was a lot of milling around it, taking pictures and crowding up against each other, which wasn't particularly keen on getting into crowds at a time when as it happened, I still got a cold in India. But anyway, went back to Thailand, and as most people probably know, Ajahn Chunda found out. I mean, he was traveling with me, which was great. He got a chance to see what life is like on the road for Ajahn Pasanno, and it's fairly full schedule. And I just know so many people that going to visit people, and it was like when I first started, before I went to India, stopped in a few days visiting, especially elderly people who don't really get to come to the monasteries much anymore, or come to the retreats that I lead. So going to see them, and it was really good to see one particular person who I've known for probably since my maybe 5th or 6th year as a monk. She started coming up to Wat Nanachad, and very instrumental in helping us do publications, both in English and in Thai, because we did them in English first, and then what that elicited was why can't we get these in Thai? So then we had to go back and get the original, because all the talks that we had that were in English were translated from tapes that had been recordings of Ajahn Chah's teachings. And so then that was really the beginning of Wat Nana Chah, printing various books for free distribution, which and even in those days at Wat Pah Pong, it wasn't really very much was being printed at all, hardly anything of Ajahn Chah. So it was, she was quite instrumental in that. She was really very instrumental in helping us. When Ajahn Chah, she's a doctor, she's a doctor, like an Ajahn, a professor of medicine, and a very respected pediatrician who was the pediatrician to all the royal grandchildren. So her sort of accolades in the world sort of go on and on. And she's an incredibly humble, dedicated Dhamma practitioner. And so that it was nice to go see her. She was still sitting up, and we were able to chat and talk. And she wasn't chatting as much as responding, but she was very, very present and solid. But when I first got there, and said, "Oh, Dr. Sarli, how are you doing?" And she's, "Oh, it's hopeless." When yeah. So she was, I think she's about 94, and she was getting very weak. So then I came back from India, and shortly after that, Ajahn Jayasar. So I went to see Dr. Sarli, and so she's not up now. She's bedridden. I don't think she's going to last very long. And she died the day before I returned. I got on the plane to come back, and then they had her funeral. I think it was yesterday, cremation yesterday. She specified that she wanted to be cremated at Wat Nana Chat, which had logistical complications because she was a titled, she was given royal titles because of all her accomplishments in the world, and was given a cremation urn, a goat, for the cremation. So that's a very high honor, and that had to be done in ceremonies needed to be done in a royal temple in Bangkok. So they did all the preliminary ceremonies, and then they took her body up to Wat Nana Chat for the cremation. So after royal ceremonies, they go into a forest monastery and put her on a pile of wood. This wonderful juxtaposition for those people who've been to Wat Nana Chat and know where the cremation area is. It's a lovely corner of the monastery, but it's two sets of steps going up with a slot in between for putting in the firewood for doing the cremation. So it's pretty basic, but that was her wish, and her family, children were really keen to make it happen. And so that various teachings, various events. There's there's a hospital there, the Samitiwait Hospital, that's been offering a papa to Abhayagiri. I think this was the 19th year that it happened. So that since the early days of Abhayagiri, and it's a big hospital, and they get all the doctors and administrators and people involved, and go and do a blessing ceremony for them, give a teaching, and it's an offering ceremony, and then they take me and a couple of the other senior monks who are there, and we get our physical checkups for the year, so it works very well. But yeah, just this long time connection with people there, and people plugging in, and I gave 2 retreats while I was there, besides the other various teachings that I gave. And the retreats were, the first one was at Banbun, which is also I've been doing for, except for the COVID years. This is the first year since COVID that retreat happened. Last year they wanted to do it, but because of COVID, the place had got kind of run down a bit and needed refurbishment. But this year they're able to pull it together, and it's a place where Ajahn Pasanno he gives 2 talks a month, first and third Sundays of every month. And and that, but there were like 135 people on the retreat, and that's, and then I gave a retreat at Wat Nana Chan. We did it out at the new Oposata, the boat, or the Oposata hall, ordination hall, and Ethan was there. They had an opportunity to plug in, and plugged in to stay a few days at Wat Nana Chan. It's great opportunity. So it was a wonderful ambience outside. It was cold, really. It was, the northeast can get cold, and you get this wind coming down from the north. So it was chilly. I mean, it was chilly by the Thai standards. It's not. I mean, it's going to be 32 tonight, and it was probably down to 60 or something, which is cold when you're dressed for warmer weather. But yeah, that had about 130 people on the retreat. So yeah, people are interested. People want to hear the teachings. They want to practice. People are. It's still delightful to see a functioning Buddhist culture where the religion and religious practice has a place of importance in the culture. Here we're still planting the seeds, and of course the Abhayagiri is a tremendous interest here, and it comes back to basics. It's this you nourish the roots, and good things happen. So whether it's in personal practice or whether it's in a sort of a societal practice over centuries, it's those basics, it's the foundations that you really want to be paying attention to. So I think I've rambled enough for this first talk of our practice sessions. So I'll offer that for reflection.